we're going to start this one with what we started with yesterday, which is midpoint and distance. So again, midpoint in its simplest form just is going to be taking my x values, adding them up and dividing by 2. Taking my y values, adding them up and dividing by 2. So, and again, it doesn't matter which order I take the x's or y's in, as long as I keep x with x and y with y. So, let's see here. If I decide, okay, I'm going to do the first one, I always like putting the 2 in right away so I don't forget it. That's the one part that's never going to change. And then basically after that, I got 2 plus 6 for x. I got -5 plus -7 for y. And the one thing I'll remind you of, if you're going to go the calculator route, even though I think you could probably do this in your head, if you were going to go that route, make sure you use parentheses before you get going too far. Because by using parentheses, all I have to do at that point is just be able to copy correctly. If we can't copy correctly, that's a whole different thing. And I just keep life simple. Let's just add them up, divide by 2. Add them up, divide by 2. No big deal. Add them up, divide by 2. Just to be sure, because I always like to be able to give out some freebies here and there. Oops. Doesn't help if I'm covering it up, though. Again, always divided by 2. Add up my x's.
Is that what we did yesterday?
Add up my y's. Again, I can't do within one point. I got to do separate pieces, separate parts. Well, if you can just look at it and know that it's minus, I just like keeping the same form every time. But if that confuses you, if you want to just do like -2 minus 10 for this first one, that'd be absolutely fine. I just like doing it so I don't get myself into any dilemmas here. Oops, wow, that's way off. Let's try that again. And again, if you get decimals, that's fine. If you want to turn it into a fractional form, that's fine. But either one works. Now it gets slightly more complicated when you get below there. Because now you're like, wait a minute here, Hardy. There's no points, it's just this line. You know, how's this work? Well, I can do it a couple of ways. One of the ways I could do it is by saying, okay, left 2 and up 5, because we talked about coordinate points yesterday. I could actually go back and label 1, 2, 3, 4 left would be -4, and up 1 would be positive. And then use the formula. That's a legit way of going about it. So again, I just go, all right. My x's are -4 and -2. So I'll add those up. My y's are 1 and 5. I'll add those up. I think there's a note packet in there too, though. And again, if I'm going to go to the calculator, if, I always make sure my numerator, oops, no, not decimal point. I always make sure my numerator's in parentheses so I get the right answer. And then 1 plus 5, I can do this one. 1 plus 5 is 6 divided by 2 is 3. Now some of you may notice, and occasionally you may be able to get away with this. Some of you are like, well, I think I can eyeball this one. If I go left 3 and up 3, that looks like the same point, and I can just eyeball it. If you can eyeball it, I don't care. Okay? That's not a big deal to me. But if you can't eyeball it, or if you're not quite sure, using the formula could come in handy. Now let's say I do that same thing on number 8. Okay, let's swing over here. You're like, ooh, that's just a straight line. Okay. So here I go left 1. I don't go up or down any. So negative 1, 0 would be my point on the bottom. And then to get the point up top, it's left 1 and up 3. So whenever I'm doing any of these, I get my points labeled. And once my points are labeled, I just go ahead, I take my x values, okay, I'm going to add those up, always divide by 2, never changes. Take my y's, 3 and 0, add them up, divide by 2, never changes. So I look and I go, okay, let's see here, negative 1 and negative 1, divided by 2 is negative 1. 3 plus 0 is 3 divided by 2. And again, you can leave it as the fraction, or if you want to leave it as a decimal, that would absolutely work. And again, I can even kind of eyeball and see, oh yeah, if I go left 1 and up 1.5, yeah, that looks like that's in the middle. So you could even kind of double check yourself that way. So as we're doing this, let's do one more. So if I did 9, where are my 2 points at for number 9? So I've got negative 1 and down 3 would be negative 3. So negative 1, negative 3. Because my left or right movement's always my first number. That's my x value. My up or down's always my second. And then here, right 2 would be, and then up 5. And I get my 2 points that way. So once I have those, again, I'm just going to use the formula. And again, the order I do these in doesn't matter. So I'm just going to use this one first. So negative 1 plus 2. Always do the divide by 2 part. And then negative 3 plus 5. And always the divide by 2 part. And I know I've said this like 3 straight days, but I'm going to say it one more time. If you're going to the calculator, okay, you have to use parentheses for any value you get up top. Okay, that 0.5 is the correct value for x here. And just as a reminder, if I forget the parentheses and I just type it in, uh-oh, that didn't work well for me because 0 is not the right answer. So you have to put the parentheses in if you're going to use the calculator, not just do it mentally. So again, add them up, divide by 2. And we're good. And again, I can even visually look and say, if I go over a half and up 1, does that look like it's right about in the middle? Yeah, it does. That's a sensible answer. So it's nice with the graph, you even get a kind of a visual double check that, yeah, I did this right. I got this. So that's how the midpoint part would work. And again, the wording's important. If you're looking for midpoint, that's different than distance. Speaking of distance, if we flip over to the back here, move this up a little bit. Okay. My formula, if I'm going to go that route, and again, this is on the note sheet from yesterday, so it might come in handy on the quiz tomorrow to have that with you. Because I don't know if distance and midpoint, the actual formulas, are going to be written in on the quiz itself. So when I'm just given 2 points, okay, I really think this is the easier way to go. But I'm also going to mention something else here. Okay, again, I got my x's, I got my y's. When I go to do this, and I'm going to do it on the calculator, if I get it turned on ever, okay, I'm going to go ahead, I'm going to write this out. So I'm going to take my x's, minus those, keep them in the parentheses, okay, plus, subtract my y's, keep them in the parentheses. Now again, I'm not going to do the square root thing at the start because it's all the parenthesis deal. And I'll show you how you could again, but I'd do this instead. I would do what's underneath. Notice nothing with the radical yet. Once I had that answer, then I'd do second x squared to get the square root and type the answer in. And again, I don't care if you put it this way or if you leave it that way. I don't care. You're like, but I really can't do it all at once. Yes, you could. If I wanted to do it all at once, though, here's the deal. You notice how they give me a parenthesis at the start? I got to add an extra one at the start if I'm going to do it. Oops. Oh, my. That's better. All right. And then if I'm doing it this way, I also am going to have to add another one at the end. Okay? I get the right answer, but the only way I'll get the right answer is if I put the extra parenthesis at the start and the extra parenthesis at the end. Otherwise, you will not get the right answer. And that would be terrible if you had like a bunch of those going in a row and that happened to you. And I want to make sure it doesn't. So just something to consider. Let's jump over to 18 here. Let's switch sides. So 18, still got my x's, still got my y's. So let's see here. So I got 2 and 5, and I'm always subtracting when I'm doing distance here. We'll square that, and then plus, because we're just following this formula. My y's are -7 and -7. Now, let's simplify something here for a second. This might make life a little easier on us. What happens when you minus a negative? Yeah, this is going to become positive. So when I go to type this one into the calculator, so I got 2 minus 5 squared plus -7 plus 7. Now, could I put -7 minus -7? Sure, but I just want to keep it a little simpler. And then again, that's not my answer. I've just got to take the square root. And I can get my answer. So it's a nice thing to be able to do in the calculator. However, what if they just give me a line? Okay, and that's why I said you've always got to read the directions, because these look a lot like the midpoint ones did on the front, but we're not looking for midpoint anymore. So let me bump this up a little bit. And I'll show you a couple of ways that you can do these. Okay, 19, one way I can always go back to is just labeling my points. So I went right 2 and up none, so 2, 0. Or I went left 4 and up 1 and get my other point. At this point, I can just plug it into the formula. So again, there's my x's, my y's are on the end. So subtract my x's and square them. Subtract my y's and square them. And then again, we'll just let the calculator do its thing here. Shift this over. Again, I'm just going to keep doing it in pieces. Let me do what's underneath first. And then again, whatever answer I get, I'm just going to take the square root. And if I get a funky decimal, we'll just go to a couple of decimal places. Or if you wanted to, my preference here, otherwise it'd be you just left just the square root of 37. Because if you did math and around that, that's going to get ugly. Let's see what would happen. Yeah, it's not going to do anything because it's just so strange of a number. So either way, Decimal's fine, radical's fine. And some of you are like, I know. When I plug things into formulas, I always make a mistake and something goes wrong. Is there any other option with distance that I could do? The answer is yes. My other option, if they're far enough apart, would be to do this. Now, I can still just keep using the formula. That's not a big deal. I can do that. But here's my other option. I can make a triangle out of it. You're like, now why would I want to do that? Well, if I did that, I can see how long each side is, because I'm trying to figure out how long it is, the segment that's here. I'll go, okay, so 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. Okay, so it's 9 long here, and 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 long here. You're like, okay, so what's the point of doing this? Well, the Pythagorean Theorem is something most of you, I'm assuming, probably have some experience with. And if you do, I could just add the squares of my sides and work on getting the answer that way. So let's see here. 9 squared plus 5 squared is 106. But I'm going to take the square root of that to get my answer. So we're looking at like 10 point, well, it'd be 30 because the 5 would make it round up. Now you're like, okay, Hardy, I don't need you changing things on me. Why you go and show us this? Because now it's just going to get me messed up. Can I just keep going with the formula? Yes. Okay. If I did that exact same problem using the formula, I notice I've got a point. Now I'd have to figure out my points if I'm going to do it with the formula. So right 5 and up 2. 4, left 4, and down 3. And again, I'd use these, -4 minus 5 squared for my x's, and -3 minus 2 squared for my y's. And I could go, okay, let's see if this really does work or if Hardy's blowing smoke here. I will prove myself to you. So I'm like, all right, squared. Yep, there's my 106. And just like before, it comes out to the same decimal. Formula's good. Pythagorean theorem with a picture's good. Don't care which one you use. I'm good with either. Okay? So then, that kind of goes over what we were doing yesterday. That's everything of what we were doing yesterday, basically. But then, when we turn over here, quadratic formula, I give some help. We got to have it an equals 0. There's the formula. Put your values in parentheses before they go in the calculator, and there's going to be 2 answers. So here, we're already in equals 0. So my a value would be 1, because I don't see a number in front of x squared. My b value would be 12. My c value would be 32. And then I plug them in. So it's negative b plus or minus the square root of b squared, again, parentheses, minus 4ac all over 2a. Now again, I don't have a way to plug this directly into the calculator, the whole thing. So I got to do pieces. So my first job is going to be to take care of this part. And just like we did in the last section, I don't want to use the square root right away because I tend to make mistakes with parentheses then. So I'm just going to do 12 squared minus 4 times 1 times 32. So I figured that part out, and I ended up with the square root of 16. But I know that the square root of 16 is going to be 4. Okay? But that just takes care of what I have outlined in purple here. So once I know that, now I can finish it up. Negative 12 plus or minus 4, because that's what this all broke down into, all over 2, and I can get the answers. So again, from here, the formula to here, I just broke down the square root. I broke down the radical. So my last part's to split this up. One of the parts goes with the plus 4, and one of the parts goes with the minus 4. And again, I have to have parentheses. Otherwise, I can totally jack this up. Like I just was about to, because I lost the parenthesis. That's better. So one of my solutions is negative 4. Negative 12 minus 4 divided by 2 is negative 8. And there's my second answer. So again, plug them into the formula, break down or put in the calculator the square root part, and then break it up into 2 separate sections. I'm just looking to see how many of each of these I got here. All right, let's do one more of these. Let's actually flip over to the back. Well, the back of this sheet, that is. So let's say we decide we're going to do number 4. We're like, all right, let's see. A, B, and C. So once I get those set, again, I'm just going to type them, kind of put them into what the formula is going to be. So negative B, the opposite of negative 13, is positive 13. Make sure I get that set right away. And then the square root of B squared, so negative 13 squared. I got to pay attention to signs that are in front. Minus 4AC all over 2 times A. And again, my first step's just to copy it in. My second step is going to be to break that radical down. So again, I'm just going to type what I see underneath the square root, underneath the radical. So I end up with the square root of 121, which is 11. Again, if you weren't sure on that one, easy enough to hit second and x squared, so we can figure that out. And then my last part, since that's what I calculated here, is to take my formula, 13 plus or minus, but all of this big thing has turned into 11. And 2 times 4 is 8. So it turns from something really big into something really small quite quickly. And once I have that, I've got 13 plus 11 over 8. And I have 13 minus 11 over 8. And again, if you type in the calculator, as long as the parentheses are there, you're good. I get 24 over 8. Which is going to end up being 3. You can double check me. And then 13 minus 11 is 2. 2 divided by 8, if you go decimaling, is 0.25. Or if you went math, enter, you'd get 1/4. Yep. Either one works. I'm fine with the decimal or the radical. I'm not picky. But that's what I've got to do on the quadratic formula. There's no other way around it. There's not like a shortcut on the calculator or anything like that. Just got to kind of bust that out. So then, the last thing we've done this week is on the last page, and that's the discriminant. And that's just part of the quadratic formula. No square roots or nothing. Just b squared minus 4ac. If it's positive, the answer I get out, I got 2 solutions. If it's 0, I get 1. If it's negative, I have 0. But I have to say the number of solutions as well. I don't just put the answer and I'm done. Okay, that's not how this works. So like for instance, if I'm doing number 7 here, same thing with my A, B, and C. Watch your signs. If you see a negative, that has to come with. Otherwise, you're kind of screwed. Whoa, disappeared. Okay. So b squared minus 4ac. That's all I need. Again, no square roots, Nothing else, just this little formula right here. And again, the easiest way to go is to simply plug in what you see. If you type it in exactly as you see it, you should have no issues at all. So negative 111, and right, my value is less than 0. It's negative. So I have 0 solutions. I have to put that because that's the whole idea of doing the discriminant, is figuring out how many answers there's going to be. So I have to do that. One more to be certain. Number 11. My A value would be 1. My B value is 16. My C value is 64. Again, take them in order. And then just do the formula. B squared minus 4AC. And let's see what happens. Oops, not 19 though. I have to be careful when I'm punching this in. Minus 4 times 1 times 64. 0. How many solutions are there if I get 0? 1. And that's it. That is what you are up against, is just dealing with problems like this. But again, read the directions carefully as you go to a part. Because again, when the quiz is there tomorrow, I'm not going to mix up problems within problems, but I'll have distinct sections and I'll say, use the discriminant, use the quadratic formula, find the midpoint, find the distance, and then it's your job to figure that out. But again, you can use the notes, so you're going to have all the formulas there anyway, as long as you've got those. And that's about it.